Yep. Welcome to another edition of Ralph Reads Raw. And today we're going to continue on with the classic Donald Goines, White Man's Justice, Black Man's Grief. And I don't appreciate how YouTube is bugging out right now. But hey, what are you going to do, right? Gotta take it as it comes. Pause. Okay. Test the mic here. 1, 2, 1, 2. Okay, that's fine. Now then, I gotta give a big shout to the people who make this channel pop off the way it does. I would like to give a big shout out to those who are tuning in now. Pat Master, salute. That's one of my hearts right there. Salute to my guy, Pat Master OST. And big shout to Lady Jane Gould. She's out there making wow music. Give her some love. Give my boy Pat Master some love. He's always showing love. And now then, let me say what up to the people who I call the executive producers. I've been the healer. She's back. As Salahuddin, he's back also. Just Being Kiki, Nana James, Tamika Lucy, Cedric Cartier, Alasia Ross, Eric Wright, Say K, Danielle Cunningham, D. Eagle Galloway, Action Jackson 2104, K-Town, BDAB, Alicia B. Sharing you out real quick. Thank you for that, brother. J Bobo, Nardowick, Maya Jackson, Scooby, Annika Evans, Vashiti Smith, Lenasia Cornish, Supreme Goddess Nikki, Lovey Parker, Marvin Coons, P Money, Chris Johnson, Stephen Wade, Glenda Harper, K. Marie Billingsley, Queen, Maria da Silva, T Money Money, 704 Liquor, House Talk Network, Papa Perk, Anaya Drake, Sherelle 5150, Damian Irving, Sweet D, Cynthia, Lost Roads, Keith Woods, Sees All the Time, Trey Noel, Taweedy, Tequila Green, Mr. Light, Goose Jack, Des Juan Manuel, The Fourth, Lady Rain 808, boom, one of the biggest supporters ever. Let me see here. And speaking of biggest supporters, Kyla Easler and the whole Easler family, Pretty Ricky 22, Desmond Thomas, Darielle Carrington, Marcus Valentine, BLE 007, Michael Woodford, Pat Master, Anthony Leach, Calm, Tama, Mr. Fulltime, Brian Latham, Mr. T, and Jologic and Friends. And yeah, big shout to all you folks. I love you all like cooked food. Word. Now then, turn this off real quick. Boom. Let's begin. Let the reading commence. Chapter 3. It had been an overwhelmingly exasperating day, and it wasn't finished yet. The long line of prisoners have finally been brought over to the basement of the county jail, where after arriving, the men and women had been put in separate cells. There were 8 long concrete cells. 7 of them belonged to the men, the 8th reserved for the women. Each cell door was operated by master control. One deputy sat in a bulletproof compartment where he could see everything that went on in the basement. The area was horseshoe-shaped. In the center, the other deputies sat at their desks taking care of the paperwork when they weren't taking the chains off the new prisoners. Salute to Jane Gould. I just had given you a shout out a few minutes before. Thank you. And keep making music, my friend. Let me read that part again. When they weren't taking the chains off new prisoners and assigning them to various cells, there were only temporary arrangements. Okay, wait. These were only temporary arrangements. The prisoners were held in the basement only until they were assigned to one of the wards, starting from the second floor up. Batmaster salutes Lady Jane Gould. The women were kept on the 6th floor while the men occupied the others. And Jay Gould says hi. Chester sat on the cold iron bench, weary and tired of the waiting. All he wanted now was to be taken up to the ward that would be his home for the next few months. Yeah, I see you with a different device, she says. Understood. Everything seems to be different. Just a tad different. All right. All he wanted to know was to be taken up to the ward. He tried to tell himself that he shouldn't be impatient, because once they did take him upstairs, it would be the last time he'd get out for quite a while. Many of the prisoners looked forward to being taken across the street to court. They knew that it would take all day and that they would get a chance to gossip with old friends that they hadn't seen for months or years. But Chester hadn't reached that stage of boredom yet. He didn't find sitting around in the bullpen gratifying. He didn't give a damn about the other men, really. He was tired of hearing the same question. What they got you for, my man? The sounds from the kitchen, a portable wagon with food on it, informed the waiting men that it wouldn't be long now. That's what the wait was always about. They always fed the men when they came back from court, because they knew the men would have been across the street in court all day without even a drink of water. They took the women out first. Men rushed to the front of the cells to stare at the women. Some of them acted as though they hadn't seen a woman in years. And in some of the cases, it was almost true. Some of the men had been in the county jail for over a year, waiting to go to court, and if they didn't get any visitors, they didn't have an opportunity to see a woman. Salute to Pat Master, who looks out with $2. Every little bit helps, boy. Thank you. But most of them, hey, Trey Smooth, salute to you. A regular right there. You're welcome here at home. All right. But most of the men were just off the street. So it didn't really make any sense to Chester that they crowded against the bars, staring at the women prisoners. The men kept a steady flow of pleasant insults towards the women. Hey, honey, pull your skirt up a little. Let me get a glimpse of that thing. Hey, mama, you with the mini on. Bend down, honey, so I can see the cheeks off them buns. Knock that shit off, a deputy yelled, knowing that he wouldn't be obeyed. The only recourse the deputies had was to rush the women through. The longer the women dallied, the louder the verbal exchanges. The women were just as bad as the men. Some of them actually enjoyed it, or seemed to. The young man who had slapped the drunk earlier sat down next to Chester. "My name's Willie Brown, brother. Looks as if you and I are going to be visitors of this fine establishment for quite a while." "You could get odds on with that bet. You could get odds on with that bet, Willie," You could get odds on with that bet, Willie, Chester replied quietly. "My name's Chester Hines, brother. It looks like the judges wanted to make sure they had plenty men. They must need some help up at the prison for picking and shit. It's that time of the year, or it will be by the time most of us go back to court for sentencing." Willie laughed. "Yeah, man, they need something, but this goddamn place is already overcrowded. They tell me they got them sleeping on the floors upstairs. I was talking to that brother over there, he said, nodding his head in the direction of a light-complexioned Negro. "The brother says there's only 18 bunks in his ward, and they got 24 men in there." With his agile mind, it didn't take any complicated thought for Chester to realize what that meant. If one ward was overcrowded like that, it meant all of them were, because wherever there was an empty bed, they would put a man. If 6 men had to sleep on the floor, then every ward had the same problem. The deputies led the women away. In minutes, 2 of them were back, and they started to unlock the men's cells, taking them one at a time. Each man stood in line until a trustee gave him a tin bowl with all of his food mixed up in it all together. No matter what they had, it was always fed to them in a bowl. 2 slices of bread were on top of the food. Chester and Willie stuck together. For some reason, the young man seemed to take a liking to Chester. They stood in line, speaking softly to each other, neither man bothering to impose on the other by crying about his case. They finally reached the food wagon, and Chester received his bowl of food. He glanced at the noodles. "Miss Cherry, salute to you." "Hello," she says. "Hello, Miss Cherry." He glanced at the noodles floating around in the lukewarm, supposed-to-be soup. The bread was semi-hard, but he knew from past experience that the only way to make it in the county was to try and eat a little of everything you got until you caught up with the wagon, and by then, it might be just sold out of everything. It might be just sold out of everything but cigarettes. Sometimes they were even out of those, too. From my long association with this fine establishment, Willie, I can definitely inform you that if you have any resistance to the food in your bowl, don't throw it away. Whatever ward we land on, there will be some hungry soul who might just buy it from you for a candy bar or something else you might like. Sometimes they have pies that they've gotten off the wagon. Yeah, brother, I'm hip to it. To my regret, I hate to inform you, I visited this free hotel before, though at the time I didn't have any plans of returning soon. But that's life. You never know about such things. All right, you guys, keep that noise down. You're not at a private resort, you know. One of the deputies yelled at him. Before eating, the men were loaded in an elevator and taken upstairs. This time, the elevator was not loaded to its capacity and the men were not handcuffed. There was nowhere for them to run. Nearly all the doors operated by control of the master. Miss Cherry, 1999, thank you. I appreciate your contribution. Thank you kindly. Every little bit helps. Thank you so much. Nearly all of the doors operated by control of the master. Nearly all the doors operated by control of the master buttons, and there were deputies on each floor, well out of the reach of the prisoners, sitting in their bulletproof control rooms. And Pat Master offers lots of praise. As the elevator stopped on the fourth floor, each man stepped out carrying his bowl of food. Maybe if we're lucky, Willie, we might get put in the same ward. I'll be able to teach you how to play chess then. I hope so, Chester. I hope so, Chester. I like to learn the game. Besides, I like to hear you rap, man. You seem to have a lot on the ball. There were 8 men altogether. As the guard opened the door, he spoke to the men. You boys are pretty lucky. This is the new ward. Some of the boys ain't got it that good. They'll have to go to the old part of the jail. But you guys get to stay in the brand new compartments. He laughed loudly as he impatiently swung the door wide and walked in, shuffling the cards he held in his hands. It was a long corridor leading down past 4 cells. When the deputy stopped at the first cell, the man inside set up a howl. Don't put none in here, man. We ain't got no damn room. It ain't but 14 beds in here, and we already got 20 men. Where the fuck do you think they're gonna sleep? With difficulty, the guard managed to control his anger. How the fuck do I know where they're going to sleep? The judge sent them over, god damn it! So you might as well make room. He called out 2 names, then yelled back to the guard standing in the hallway. Break number 1, 2 going in. The men inside the cell began to curse loudly. Chester stared in the new cell block. If these were the new cells, he sure didn't want any part of it. Each was a large open bay with double bunks strung out in a circle around it. The back of it was bars, just like the front, so that the deputies could walk up and down the catwalks at night without fear of being grabbed and held hostage. Yazway, my brother, kick that skill. You the truth. Love the work you put in, bro. You bring words to life off that paper. Thank you, Yazway. I appreciate you with those kind words. You're appreciated, brother. Of being grabbed and held hostage against a tiny wall that was like a box with the shower inserted inside of it, was the toilet. It sat out in plain view. Right next to it was the table where everybody had to eat. It was clean, but whenever a man had to shit, the men playing cards at the table would have to put up with the smell or quit playing until he finished. Chester turned to the deputy. If by chance you're overcrowded, turnkey, how's the chances of a man getting locked up in the old side? If I've got to jail, I'd like to be around the old surroundings. They bring back such memories, you know. The deputy laughed. Yeah, Mac, I know just what you mean. These new compartments seem to have that effect on just about everyone who comes up here, especially if they've had the opportunity to have visited the old side. Close number 1, the turnkey yelled and and walked down the rock towards the next ward. And walked down the rock towards the next ward. The prisoners followed behind dejectedly. The sight of number one had taken the heart out of them. When they reached number two, a man lying on a bunk glanced up and yelled, "Put them white boys in here, Dep!" The colored deputy glanced out of the corner of his eye at the two white prisoners. Chester watched the proceedings, amused. He glanced into the ward and noticed that it was just as crowded as the first one, but there was one difference. The first cell had been full, but there had only been black men in it. This one had 4 white prisoners in it, and they all had one thing in common. Each man sported a black eye. The deputy knew as well as Chester what was happening. From past experience, Chester knew the white boys were being fucked and their food and money were being taken. It happened on every ward. Whenever possible, the turnkeys tried to make it equal. If 20 men were in a cell, they tried to make it 10 white and 10 black. But it was impossible. For one thing, the whites made bond as soon as possible. Either their people were able to raise the money, or their bonds weren't as high as the average black man's. Either way, whichever Whitey was unfortunate enough to have to spend some time in the county jail, it was an experience he would never forget. The loss of his manhood was only the beginning. The loss of his life was a good possibility. The only ones who were ever spared were those who had done time or who knew the ropes or who could talk like a brother and fight as good as one too. There was absolutely no 2 ways about it. A white boy had to fight to save his asshole. The deputy hesitated, then called out, "Break number 2!" The door slid open quietly. That was one thing it had on the old side, Chester thought coldly. And about the only thing. The damn doors didn't make any noise. The black men inside the cell crowded towards the front. If they come in here, I want the blonde," a thin black boy in his early teens said loudly. "You guys fuck with these prisoners," the deputy said angrily, "and your asses are going to be in more trouble than you're already in." He didn't even have to glance at the cards to tell the white prisoners that this was where they were assigned. He knew that the white deputy on the desk had tried to assign them where other white boys were, and this was it. He did glance at the cards to get their names, though. "Okay, you two, in there," he said. The 2 white kids looked at each other nervously. "Man, I ain't going in that fucking place. You can take me to the goddamn hole, but I ain't going in there," the taller of the 2 said. "All right, buddy, come on," one of the black prisoners in the cell said. "It ain't as bad as that. The guys were just fooling on you. Come on in. You see we got some other white boys in here." The deputy stared at the Negro angrily. "You, get your shit," he said loudly. Then he pointed at the black man who had first asked him to put the white boys inside the cell. "You two, get your shit. Both of you are moving." He twisted his head around and glanced at the prisoners behind him. The closest men to him were Chester and Willie. "What's your name?" he said, and pointed a pencil at. he said, and pointed a pencil at Chester. Chester Hines. The answer was sharp and to the point. You aren't afraid to go in there, are you, Mac? The deputy inquired, knowing the answer before even asking the question. Chester didn't bother to answer. He just stepped past the two white boys and walked inside the cell. Since you're doing me such a favor, deputy, don't forget my partner there, he said, pointing towards Willie. Willie laughed and didn't even wait for the guard. He yelled his name back over his shoulder. Willie Brown is my white folks' name. Kenyatta is my black name, deputy. Use whichever one you want, he said as he stepped inside the cell. The deputy wiped sweat from his brow. I thought I told you guys to get your shit together, he said loudly. Man, we ain't did nothing, have we, fellas? They turned to the man inside the ward, but no one spoke up in their behalf. I ain't asking you again, the deputy said, his voice revealing anger. The two men started to pick up their meager belongings. As each man moved around his bunk, Chester pulled Willie over and whispered in his ear, Listen, baby boy, if you don't want to sleep on the floor, this is what we're going to have to do. As soon as the deputy moves away from the door, we take over the two bunks they had left. We take over the two bunks that they left. We got one thing in our favor. They were bunking together, so we could do the same thing. Either you take the top or the bottom, it doesn't make a difference to me. Just as long as we get a bunk. Don't make no damn sense us sleeping on the goddamn floor. Willie shook his head in agreement. We might have a little trouble out of some of these niggas, man. Chester studied the man he was talking to. There was no fear there. You ain't worried about it, are you, Blood? You ain't worried about it, are you, Blood? Chester asked quietly. Close number 2, the deputy yelled. The two men who were put out of the ward followed behind the deputy, cursing. One second. For an answer to Chester's question, Willie moved over and jumped up on the top bunk. Chester was right behind him. As they commandeered the bunks, the other men in the cell who had been sleeping on the floor began to yell, Hey man, you can't take them beds. We've been waiting weeks for an opening. 3 of the men lying on the floor got up and walked towards Chester and Willie. Willie jumped from his bunk quickly, landing next to Chester. Listen, baby, and I ain't gonna tell you but once, Chester began. These bunks ain't empty, you dig? And they weren't going to be empty, you dig? The guys that stayed here wasn't about to go home, so you weren't going to get them no way. Now, they took us from our bunks and brought us down here to exchange places with them guys. So that's what we're doing. They're going to get our bunks, they're going to get our bunks, and we got theirs. Chester stared at the men in the eye. He was taller than all 3 of them, but they were younger. 2 of them were black, while one of them was white. He glared at the Negroes. He knew if any trouble came, it would come from them. It would come from them. Man, you ain't got to explain anything to them niggas, Willie said, pulling his shirt off. The muscles on his arms jumped. Even though he was short, he was so husky that he looked like a young bull in his prime. One of the young brothers in front backed up to make sure he wouldn't be in front if a fight broke out. The rest of the men just watched. What would happen now would be a case of the strongest winning out. The men at the rear of the line for a bunk would try and take the place of those at the top. If the top men were weak, they would lose out. The men who already had bunks were thankful the new men didn't come in and try to take theirs. It happened like that at times. If a real gorilla came in, he would look around, pick his mark, then make his move. Either the man who owned the bunk fought or gave it up. He'd have to do one or the other. After several tense seconds, the men backed off. Chester relaxed and sat back on the bunk. It was over. They had won. Willie sat down beside him. Well, big bro, looks like the first round goes to us, don't it? You can bet on it, Willie. You can bet on it, Willie. As long as we're in here, we're going to win all of them. You can bet on that, too. Let me take a pause for the calls, y'all. Whew. All right, y'all. For those familiar with Ralph Reed's Raw, I'm talking Pat Master OST. Miss Cherry with her bountiful donation. Thank you very much. Totally appreciate it. Pat Matt with his $2. Dre Smooth's in the house. Jay Gould, the lady Jane Gould herself, the music master. She's up in here. And, you know, you folks really keep this channel alive. You know, like y'all really do. Y'all have no idea. And for those who are familiar with the product at hand, know what it is that I'm trying to do here. I am creating a podcast version. As you can see here, I'm on the mic recording whatever I put into it into the computer. At the same time, this is going on live. And for those watching live are going to see me mess up a lot of the time. Now, when I get warm and start reading full throttle, then you get that too. But again, you know, it's not like this is an official reading where I got to stop and take a minute to actually try to do this right. I don't really have that pressure here on Ralph Reed's Raw. When I mess up and I start again. Yeah. Jane Gould says, yeah, I said hi. I know you're here, you know. You're here, and I need y'all to know to check out her music if you're into techno, EDM, and alternative hip hop. Lady Jane Gould and company. And I just want to wish you all the best. I love you all like cooked food. Now, we're going to begin again in a few. Just let me get a few seconds in this fan. Whew, thankfully, the project heat is not on. All right, then. Get a few more seconds. That's that stuff. Now, I'm going to end it off with chapter 4 and continue. Come back in a couple days and do some more. Because you know how we do here on Ralph Reed's Raw. Alright? My man Pat Master, Master of Ceremonies, Ralph Reed's Raw. I love you all, man. You know that, right? Like, Miss Cherry, it's so amazing to put a face to the voice. You have gotten me through so many hours of travel from Iowa to Mississippi and back. Wow. Totally appreciated sharing those beautiful roads with you. The sights must be so incredible. And for my voice to even bump off of those rocks, those trees, that land means the world to me. And I want to give a big shout to Iowa and Mississippi, and the Mississippi River, the whole Midwest. The Midwest, mwah, nothing but love over in Detroit, Chicago, Indianapolis, Minneapolis. That's what's up. I got a lot of love for all of y'all out there. And let me just continue to earn your love. Let me turn this off and let's begin. Ralph Garcia got me through life. Pat Master, I'm going to appreciate you just said that, brother. Psh, word up. Chapter 4. Later that evening, Chester and Willie found out that they had not only bluffed the weak ones in the ward, but had gained the respect of the strong ones as well. So they fit right in. They waited until the evening meal before the dogs in the ward showed their hands. Then the action was directed towards the two white boys. Hot dogs were served for the evening meal, and as the white boys came back carrying their trays, 4 black inmates stopped them. You see that? One of the men pointed out to the 2 white boys. The boys turned their heads and watched as 4 other white boys on the ward took their trays around, each one of them taking the hot dogs from his tray and giving them to the black inmates. One of the white boys came over to the crowd. "Hey, Jesse, how about me keeping one of these, since you're going to get theirs too?" he asked, nodding towards the new white inmates as he held out his tray for Jesse to take the hot dogs from it. Jesse, a tall, brown-skinned black man, stared hard at the thin white boy. I'll go along with it this time, Mike, but don't make it no habit." He pushed one of the hot dogs back on Mike's tray. The small, undernourished-looking white boy grinned as if a big favor had been done for him. He flashed his hot dog in front of his friends. Damn it. He flashed his hot dog in front of his friends, not saying in words what his action meant. "Look what I got, fellas. Don't you wish you had one too?" And they did wish they had one, because none of them had been that fortunate. "What's your name, boy?" Jesse asked sharply, sticking his finger in the boy's face. My friends call me Tony," the boy answered just as sharply. He hadn't. My friends call me Tony. The 1 second. Yep. Gotta wait for that noise to finish. Okay. My friends call me Tony, the boy answered just as sharply. He had nerve, but he was outnumbered almost 3-1. Almost 3-1. His friend wasn't any help at all. "Here, man," his partner said quickly. "You can have my hot dogs. I ain't hungry no way." He held out his food. "Take it all, man. I don't want none of it." Tony spoke for his friend. "Leave him something, man. He gave you his hot dogs, so leave the potatoes for him. Don't be silly, Gene. How long you think we're gonna be here? Just for a day or something?" The man who had taken his food refused to give back the potatoes. Tony glared at him. "What are you, man? Some kind of fucking animal? You act like you ain't used to eating." Chester laughed. He liked the white boy's nerve, but that was as far as he'd allowed himself to go. He didn't want to get into it one way or another. It was up to the white boys to get themselves out of it. If they really put up enough of a struggle, they could pull it off. All they needed was the help of the other white boys. There were only a few asshole bandits in the ward, and most of them were cowards. If they didn't have a pack behind their backs, they wouldn't do anything by themselves. Tony walked over near the toilet and quickly tossed his hot dogs into the stool. Now, if you want them, get them out of the shitter, he said coldly, and sat down and began eating the rest of his food. Chester laughed loudly again. One of the men asked him sharply, "What's so goddamn funny?" "You punk!" Chester snarled, and his eyes had turned a cold, freezing jet black. "Now, if you want some more hot dogs, here are a few you might be able to get if you're man enough to take them." Willie laughed too. "Yeah, baby, if you're hungry enough, I guess you might as well go for broke." Tony split the rest of the food with his friend. The other white boys in the ward just watched, afraid to say anything. Later on that night, after the trays had been picked up, Jesse walked over to where Willie and Chester were sitting. "Say, my man," he said, "I ain't trying to be funny, but tell me something. You guys happen to be friends of those two Ofays or something? Of those two Ofays or something?" "Nah, baby, ain't nothing like that," Willie answered quickly. "What you and them do is your affair. What you and them do is your affair." He glanced at Chester to see how he was taking it. Chester nodded in agreement. "Okay then," Jesse replied, "'cause we're going to have us a little fun tonight, and we didn't want to be stepping on anybody's toes, if you know what I mean." "Yeah, man, we know just what you mean," Chester said quietly. He knew just what the man meant. They were getting ready to have a little rape party and didn't want any interference. Jesse walked away and stopped beside the white boys. "You boys are new to this rock, so I'll tell you the rules. We make all the new guys take a shower, so you two had better start getting ready if you don't want to end up taking it with your clothes on." "Is that right?" Tony asked, and from the sound of his voice, one could tell he knew just what was about to come off. His partner, Gene, didn't, though. He stepped right into the trap. "Yeah, man," Gene said, eager to be accepted by the group. "That won't be any trouble. I was waiting to take a bath anyway. Do they have any soap a person can use?" He looked around in bewilderment when the others broke out laughing at his gullibility. One of the prisoners tossed him a bar of soap. He caught it and stood looking at it for a moment, wondering why the others were laughing at him. "What you gonna do, man?" the prisoner who tossed him the soap asked. You gonna stare at it all night? Or put it to use getting some of that funk off of you?" Tony looked over at his friend, but Gene dropped his eyes. "You know, man, you don't have to take a bath until you get ready, don't you?" Tony asked. "It ain't none of your business what he does, my man," one of the men said. "What's your name, mister?" Tony asked quietly. "Why," the short, dark-complexioned man answered. "I'm just curious," Tony said. "I seem to remember that it was me that came in here with Gene, so I was wondering if some mistake had been made or not." The short man seemed to gain a little courage from Tony's reply. They call me Tommy Boy, but before it's over, you might be calling me Daddy Tommy." He laughed sharply. Tony didn't crack a smile. "Before I do that, mister, one of us will be dead. And I don't mean hurt. I mean dead." His threat didn't go unheeded. The ward fell silent, waiting to see what Tommy would do. The long scar on the side of Tommy's face seemed to glow as he broke out in a sweat. Chester, watching the action, read Tommy quickly. As Tommy glanced around for help, he decided to interfere just to see how much of a coward Tommy was. He could see the fear in the man as the man glanced around for some of his friends to come to his rescue. "What's wrong, baby?" Chester asked coldly. "You afraid of a little old Peckerwood? One big bad nigger like you? One big bad nigger like you? I can't believe my eyes." "I ain't afraid of no honky or nigger alive, brother," the man blustered, trying to show courage where it really wasn't. "You," he said harshly, pointing to Gene. "You gonna take that shower or not?" He had decided to ignore he had he had decided to ignore Tony's threat or leave Tony to some of the other brothers. He'd help when they jumped on him, but he'd be damned if he'd be the first one to jump on that young honky. He had a feeling that the young white boy could fight, and he made the mistake before and found out that all white boys weren't afraid of black men. After glancing at Tony, Gene got up from the table and made his way into the shower. He undressed near the shower, trying to find as much privacy as possible. As soon as the water started to run, the dogs went into action. Tommy was the first one into the shower after Gene. He undressed at the side, dropping his clothes in a heap. He grinned over his shoulder at the other men, making sure not to catch Tony's eye. He went into the shower, followed closely by one of his friends. "Wait, man, wait!" Gene screamed from the shower. Then the sound of a slap was heard. There was silence for a brief moment. Then a scream was heard. "Oh my God! You're killing me! Please, man, please! It's too big! You're busting me open! Shut up, boy! Shut your goddamn mouth, or you'll get something stuck in it too!" It sounded like Tommy, but Chester couldn't be sure. He gritted his teeth. If there was one thing he hated, was the rape of another man. Chester didn't care if they were black, white, or green. Just the idea of raping another man got on his nerves. He pushed the chess pieces in front of him around on the board. "You want to play a game? You want to play a game?" Chester glanced up and saw Tony looking down at him. "You want to play a game?" Chester glanced up and saw Tony looking down on him. "Yeah, man, come on," Chester said, setting up the pieces. It was something to take his mind off of what was going on. It was something to take the mind off of what was going on in the shower. The action from the shower brought back memories of when he was just a boy trying to make his way up from the South. He had caught a ride on a boxcar that was already occupied by an older black man. The man had tried to rape Chester later that night after giving him some wine. It had ended with Chester getting lucky and sticking 8 inches of knife in the man's chest. After searching the man's pockets and removing the $10 that he had found there, he had then rolled the body to the door of the boxcar and pushed it out. He had only been 14 then, but it was an experience that he had never forgotten. "Please, man! Oh, please! That's enough! Please! Please! Help! Help!" The sound of another slap could be heard, then only the sounds of grunts and moans. Chester watched the young white boy in front of him. He was a nice-looking kid, Italian, with dark hair, a small nose, and lips that a woman would love to kiss. He was handsome, and to many of the men inside the county jail, That meant he was open for their advance. That meant he was open for their advances. It was thought that if a man was handsome, he'd have to have some woman in him. There was something else about him though, and Chester noticed it. The boy was young, about 19, and he was also solid. He even stood and he stood an even 6 feet and looked as if he played football all his life. It was something he didn't generally do, but Chester wanted to know. Tony was just too cool. You ain't worried, man. I guess you know you're on the menu next. You ain't worried, man. I guess you know you're on the menu next. Tony shrugged his shoulders. I might be, but you can bet it won't be that easy for them. The statement wasn't a boast. He was just stating a fact. The man meant to fight if he had to. What's going on over there? The sound of one of the men locked down the rock came to them. You boys wouldn't be playing a little sax with them sweet little white girls they put in there this afternoon, would you? One of the older cons sitting at the table playing bridge spoke up. Why don't you do your own time, con, and quit worrying about what's going down this way, and quit worrying about what's happening down this way? You guys get all the luck. Every time they bring some white girls in there, they always put them down there. I think I'm going to get transferred down there. Myself so I can get in on some of that good pussy. You might come down here and end up getting fucked yourself, my man, another man at the card table yelled back. The men burst out laughing, loud, Negro laughter, the sound that could only be made by blacks, spontaneous, universal. Navy Nave, I see you in today. Salute to you. Spontaneous, universal. Wherever blacks congregate, whether a congenial gathering or not, if humor surfaced, it was a black sound. Why don't you guys break that shit up? All you're gonna do is bring the debt back here, fucking with us. And we're supposed to get the TV set sometime this week. You guys fucked that up. Another prisoner yelled from the Ward 3. Another prisoner yelled from Ward 3. Another prisoner yelled from Ward 3. My man's right, an elderly prisoner they called Pop said. Pop stared around at the younger convicts. You know Flip Wilson comes on this week, and if we're lucky, we might just get the TV set on that night. The men fell silent. His words of wisdom made sense, even if they resented someone telling them to be quiet. They looked forward to the day. They looked forward to the one day a week the television set was brought down to their rock. If they were disorderly, the television was withheld from them. It was the one privilege the deputies controlled that could be used against them. The threat of withholding the television set was a strong one. That was the last thing the men wanted to happen. Tommy was the first man out of the shower. He strutted around with his small chest stuck out as if he had just done something important. Man, oh man, he said loudly, that was sure enough pussy. He glanced over at Tony, making sure that what he said was heard. Yeah, man, that was what I call real penitentiary pussy. That old girl is right. I'm going to see to it that she's taken care of. He walked over to his bunk and fumbled around under his pillow until he found what he was looking for. He withdrew a candy bar and flashed it around. One of his partners came out of the shower and saw Tommy with the candy. "Hey, Tommy, give me a piece of that sweetness, man. I'll straighten up with you when the store comes around." "You want to sell one of those candy bars, Tommy?" Willie asked. Tommy shook his head no, and Willie asked loudly, "Is there anyone in here who has some candy or a bar or something to sell? Is there anybody in here who has some candy or a bar or something to sell? I'll buy it, whatever it is, if it's from the store wagon. Hey, Blood," a tall, slim brother yelled from his bunk where he had been reading. "I got some cupcakes I'll sell you, man." Tommy laughed loudly. "You better believe the preacher will sell you something. It will cost you 3 times as much as what it cost him from the wagon, Blood." "The name ain't Blood. Call me Willie, man, if you have to call me anything," Willie said sharply. "If you have to call me anything," Willie said sharply. Chester glanced up at his new partner. Willie had some strange ways for a young man. He acted older than he really was, Chester reflected. Maybe that was why he liked the young man. He seemed mature for a kid his age. Gene finally came out of the shower. Tommy called him over and put his arm around his shoulders as though he were a woman. "Here, honey," he said. "I saved this just for you." He held out the candy bar. For a brief moment, Gene hesitated. Then he took the candy bar. "Thanks," he murmured shyly. He moved slowly, breaking the embrace. His walk was wide-legged as if he was hurt. With downcast eyes, he walked over to where Tony and Chester were playing chess. He opened the candy wrapper and shyly offered a piece of the candy to Tony. "Man, get that shit away from me," Tony said coldly, not taking his eyes away from the chessboard. Gene held the candy out towards Chester, who reached over and took a piece. "Hey, Preach, how much did you say you wanted for that cupcake?" Willie asked. 50 cents, my man. Just 50 cents, Preacher said, not bothering to take his eyes from the book he was reading. "Oh, man, that's too damn much. I can understand you making a profit out of it, but that's 3 times as much as they cost on the wagon," Willie answered as he dug down in his pockets and examined the loose change he had. "No, baby. I got to buy some cigarettes, so I can't afford that much money for cupcakes. How much would you charge for a pack of smokes if you had some?" "Well, it just so happens that I do have some," Preacher answered as he laid his book down and reached under his pillow. He pulled out a carton which held cupcakes and cigarettes. "When is the wagon due back on his rock, Pops?" he asked suddenly. The old gray-haired man at the card table scratched his head. "I think it should be back on his rock day after tomorrow, if I'm not wrong. But you know how that goes, Preach. You can't never tell about that fucking wagon until it really shows up." "How much do you want for your cigarettes?" Tony asked quietly. His voice brought on a sudden silence to the prison ward. Chester glanced up from his game of chess. He knew instantly what was wrong. The black prisoners must have been in the habit of taking the money from all the white inmates. That explains why the white boys were picking up the butts and tearing them open and re-rolling them. He had noticed it, but as such things go, he hadn't really paid any thought to it. thinking that maybe the white boy he'd seen picking up the butts had just been broke. Now he knew, without a doubt, from the silence that fell on the ward when Tony had spoken up. Now the shit would be in the fan, he thought. Tony had brought it to a head, unwillingly. It was too late to retract his words. Boy, you got some money? The words came from Larry, a tall, brown-skinned Negro who was beginning to turn fat while still in his late 20s. His gut hung over the dirty blue jeans. You hear me, honky? I asked you if you had some money, Larry said as he walked around the table so that he stood right behind Tony. My cigarettes cost $1 a pack, man, and I ain't got but 3 packs left, the preacher said loudly. So my cigarettes cost $1 a pack, man, and I ain't got but 3 packs left, the preacher said loudly so that all of the men could hear. God damn, baby, you sure are high with your stuff, Willie snapped, anger beginning to show in his voice. He shoved the change back into his pocket, not having enough to buy it back. How much were you short, Willie? Tony asked him. How much were you short, Willie? Tony asked him quietly, ignoring the man behind him. Willie shrugged. That's all right, my man. He wants too much of them damn things anyway. I'd rather quit smoking first. You ain't got no money, no way, white boy, Larry said. All that shit you got in your pocket belongs to me. Now set it out before I get mad. Slowly, Tony got up from the table, never glancing at the man behind him. He exploded in motion. Using his elbow, he caught Larry on the jaw with a hard blow, and still turning, he followed it up with a right cross to Larry's chin, then shot a combination of powerful punches into Larry's overripe stomach. Larry let out a grunt and slumped forward, almost out on his feet, but Tony didn't stop. He knew enough about jailhouse fighting to know that you had to hurt a man when you fought him or quit sleeping at night. In an open bay or ward where prisoners can walk around at night, it was too dangerous to allow a man you had not fought hard and therefore had not instilled fear into to be able to tip up on you while you slept. Tony grabbed the slumping man by his dirty shirt and spun him around, shoving him viciously headfirst into the steel bars. As the man bounced back, he grabbed him by the back of his shirt. He grabbed him by the back of his shirt and pants and pushed him viciously back into the bars again. The steel bars did the rest of his work. The sound of breaking bones could be heard. It happened so fast, Larry's dog pack didn't have time to interfere. After seeing what had happened to their partner, the rest of them didn't have the nerve to go to Larry's rescue. Dep on two! Dep on two! Pops yelled loudly. We need a doctor back here! One of the prisoners in the first ward took up the yell, until finally the sound of the outer steel doors being opened was heard. Tony grabbed Larry's semi-conscious body and pushed it away from where they were playing chess. Larry fell, sprawled, face down by the door. What's going on back there? The night deputy asked from the front of the corridor. There's been an accident back there. One of the card players There's been an accident back there. One of the card players yelled back at the deputy. You better get a stretcher, man. A man's been hurt. The deputy came running back toward the ward. He glanced in at the unconscious man lying on the floor. What happened to him? He asked, studying the pool of blood that was beginning to form beneath the man's head. He was running to get to the toilet and slipped, I guess. Fell headfirst into the bars, one of the card players said casually. Hey, Bob, you better call for a... Hey, Bob, you better call for a stretcher, the deputy yelled back to his partner, who stood in the doorway waiting for his partner to check out the disturbance. I guess you guys know that this will blow your television privilege for this week. He glanced at the impassive faces of the men inside the ward. He knew he'd never get the truth out of them this way. They'd have to be taken out one at a time. Then one of them would tell what happened, but never in front of another prisoner. He couldn't blame them. To be a known informer on the ward was almost a sure way of losing your life quickly. The deputy was white, and as he studied the faces of the men, he saw Gene. "What's your name, boy?" he asked, seeing the fresh bruises on the young man's face. He frowned. "Come over here. Let me get a better look at you." He watched angrily as Gene walked slowly towards him. The boy could hardly walk. The deputy had a damn good idea of what had happened in Gene's case. The boy's face was marked up, and his eye was already turning a bluish red. "You're new on his ward, aren't you?" he asked, already aware that this was one of the new white boys who had been put on the ward that day before he came on shift. "Where's the other boy that came in with you?" "I'm right here," Tony answered, not bothering to get up. Well, your ass up here. Well, get your ass up here so that I can look at you. Well, get your ass up here so that I can look at you, the deputy said. He waited for Tony to get up, expecting to see his face all marked up too. He was surprised when the rather handsome young man stopped in front of him. The man didn't have a mark on him anywhere. He wondered if the boy was a queer. If so, that would be the reason why he wasn't marked up. He'd probably take a black dick with happiness, so there wouldn't be any reason for the black bastards to whip him, the deputy thought. He turned his anger on Gene as he waited for the stretcher. "Who did that to you?" he asked sharply. "You don't have to worry. I'll get the son of a bitch out of here right now. I'll get that son of a bitch out of there right now, and you'll never have to worry about him again." His voice was deadly serious. Gene hesitated for just a brief moment. He hadn't enjoyed what happened to him, and he knew if the man stayed in there, it would happen again. Tears started to flow down his cheeks. He was frightened. He was frightened. The experience would leave an indelible imprint upon him for life. Visualizing it happening over and over and over and over and over and over again intensified his growing fear. Desperately, he stared up at the tall deputy. Desperately, he stared up at the tall deputy, realizing instantly that the deputy spoke the truth. Tommy also realized that the young white boy was about to break. His knees shook as he thought about the possibilities of what would happen if he was charged with sodomy. He was fighting a simple larceny charge. The most he would get out of it would be 2 years, but a sodomy charge could get him up to 15 years. He stepped up to the bars. "Oh man, ain't nothing wrong with Gene. He's just sparring around with one of the boys and got hit in the eye by mistake. I'll personally see to it that it don't happen again." The deputy eyed Tommy as though he had just crawled from under a rock. Boy, if you don't want to see the inside of the hole tonight, you better get the fuck away from here. Tommy started back towards his bunk. But the deputy, noticing the way Jeans shied away from Tommy, called him back. As Tommy approached the bars, Jean again shied away from him. Boy, if you don't like what happened to you, the deputy said, you better speak up. The sound of the deputy's partner approaching caused him to stop. That's all right, the partner said. I got a better way. Then I'll leave it up to you. That's all right, the partner said. I got a better way. Then I'll leave it up to you. You treat your people like we're operating a fucking home. He took out his keys as two other deputies came up to the door. He unlocked the steel door and stood back. Bring your ass on out here, he said, pointing Jean out to the other deputies. I think that boy's been gang raped. I want him taken over to the hospital and examined. Also, that one there, he said, pointing to Tony. I don't think he was raped. He just laid down like a fucking whore and gave it up. But I want him examined also. If he's full of cum, the doctors will find it. Then we'll lock his pretty ass up with the rest of the queers. Tony blushed down to his shoelaces. He started to take a punch at the deputy as he walked out of the cell. You're a lying deputy, and I don't like anybody to brand me a queer, he stated loudly as his anger got the better of his judgment. Take it easy, kid, Chester said quietly. We're the ones who have to live with you, Tony. We're the ones who have to live with you, Tom. God, Lord. Tommy and Tommy. Shit. Take it easy, kid, Chester said quietly. We're the ones who have to live with you, Tony. And we know you're a man, so fuck what a goddamn turnkey thinks. Astonishment flashed across the deputy's face. He started to say something, but changed his mind as he glanced at the two colored deputies that had come back with the stretcher. What's wrong, boy? He managed to say anyway. This young kid here must be your girlfriend. You afraid you might get charged with a little sodomy or something like that? Chester laughed in his face. That's the last thing I'm worried about, deputy. I just hate to see you brand that kid a queer when he ain't. I'll just bet he ain't, the deputy said, sneering. You bastards ain't got enough decency to allow a boy like that to come in here and do his own time without being tampered with. Tony turned on the deputy furiously. You no good peckerwood hillbilly bastard. I just wish I could be locked up with you for about 5 minutes. I'd show you if I was a queer or not. His anger flashed in his eyes, and he seemed about to explode. The deputy was basically an honest man. His anger had really sprung from the frustration of his inability to stop the rapes that occurred on his shift. This happened because he worked afternoons and the majority of the rapes happened then. Also, 95% of the rape victims were white, which really made the deputy angry. He was Southern born. Even the sight of white women visiting some of the black prisoners on visiting day so angered him that he would always find some reason to take away the prisoners' small privileges. The privation that he inflicted, the privation that he inflicted on them was cruel, harsh, unjust. 20 men, every man in the ward, had to suffer because one black man on the ward happened to have a white woman for a wife. With astonishing cunning, the deputy would come up with some reason to take away their television rights. At times, when he could get away with it, making sure the other deputy on shift with him didn't realize what was happening, he would make arrangements to take away store privileges for a week. This would cause untold hardship for the men inside the ward. They would have to buy their supply of cigarettes and toothpaste and other necessities from the men on the wards down the hall. Everything cost double. A candy bar that cost 10 cents at a store on the week. A candy bar that cost 10 cents at a store on the streets cost 15 cents on the prison wagon. Then when a candy bar that cost 10 cents at a store on the streets cost 15 cents on the prison wagon, and when resold by one prisoner to another, the price would reach 30 cents or more. Hello, hello, Joanna B. Marketing. J3, salute to you, young lady. Let me see here. This was when the store had just left. Later on in the week, when these items became scarce, the price for a candy bar would be raised to 50 cents, and the men paid for it gladly, glad to be able to buy a candy bar. Glad to be able to buy a candy bar or anything to kill the hunger pangs. For hunger was something that stayed with the men in the county jail. But the deputy was an honest man. He wouldn't think of stealing something. If he found a wallet in the street containing money, he would return it, unless there were pictures inside of it showing that the owner was black. If that happened, it was a completely different matter. The deputy looked at Tony's flushed face. Okay, boy, he said easily. We'll find out if you're all that much of a man. The doctor would damn sure know. If you haven't been tampered with, I'll personally apologize. He glanced at the other white men inside the ward. All of them had marks on their faces. He shook his head. I'll damn sure apologize because you'd be a damn sight better man than I give you credit for. Let's get on with it, one of the other deputies said as he lifted his end of the stretcher. Gene and Tony were ushered down the corridor behind the men bearing Larry on the stretcher. The sound of their feet faded away. All that could be heard by the men left in the ward was the sound of doors being unlocked and then closed. Silence fell on the ward. Men glanced at each other uneasily. The same thought was in each of their minds. Pops finally broke the silence. Well, Tommy, looks like you can start packing your shit. What you mean, old man? Stop talking crazy. You ain't making no sense, he said, afraid to face the truth. What's happening over there? A man asked from another ward. Looks like somebody's ass is going to be up Schitt's Creek. What you going to do? Gangbang them whiteys? It ain't none of your goddamn business, Tommy yelled back, trying to use anger to cover his fear. There ain't no damn witnesses, he said, then glanced around the ward. He looked at Chester and Willie. You guys ain't seen nothing, understand? He said harshly. Willie spoke up before Chester could say anything. Man, what was that? A threat? Man, what was that? A threat? Or are you asking us not to say anything? You're in enough trouble now without overloading your weak ass. Chester laughed at his partner's words. It took some of the heat out of It took some of the heat out of him. It took some of the heat out of him that Tommy's words had aroused. Say, brother Tommy. Say, brother, Tommy didn't mean any harm. He was just asking if you're gonna stay out of the shit, man. That's all, another one of the rape members said. He glanced around at the white boys left in the ward. Don't none of you bastards go getting any ideas, you hear? Because if you do, it's gonna go plenty damn hard for you if something comes out of this shit. Aw, man, we ain't got nothing to worry about. They ain't got no witnesses. So where is their case? It's our word against his, and he ain't no better than we is, Tommy said. What happened to Larry? A voice from the ward next door inquired. He sure looked fucked up when they took him past here. Pops added his little bit. He made a mistake fucking with a man when he thought he was fucking with a punk. That Whitey ain't shit, Tommy said, still trying to impress people with his mouth instead of his actions. If he was such a punk, Tommy, why didn't you try him by yourself? Chester asked sharply, hitting a sore spot with Tommy. Tommy rose to the bait. Listen, man, ever since you came in here, you've been tossing your weight around. Now, I don't know you and I don't give a fuck about... Now, I don't know you and I don't give a fuck about you, you dig? He glared coldly at Chester, his anger getting the better of him. As he stared into Chester's eyes, he realized he had made a big mistake. He hurried to straighten it out as Chester came out of his seat. He put his hands out in front of him as if he was trying to hold off a big weight. Slowly, Chester regained his temper and lit a cigarette. Boy, you think you got trouble now, but ain't nothing compared to what you gonna have if you step out of line with me. Now I'm gonna tell you one time, and I'm not gonna bother to repeat myself. You ain't gonna be with us too much longer, but for the short time that you're around me, I want total respect from you. Not halfway, but complete respect. The same respect I give every man I meet that shows he's a man. Seeing that Chester wasn't about to fight, Tommy spoke up. Well, you ain't been giving me no hellified respect since you've been here. I said I give respect to those who show that they're men. From what I've seen of you, boy, you're more of an animal than a man. So you don't deserve any respect. What you really deserve is to be offed. You went in there and raped that kid. Now you out here shitting on yourself. And you think somebody's gonna respect you? Chester laughed harshly. Wait a minute, brother. If he wasn't no honky, I wouldn't have bothered him. You understand? No matter how young or weak he was, I wouldn't have fucked with him, Tommy said as he saw the disbelief on Chester's face. And as he saw the disbelief on Chester's face, he added, I'm for real about that, brother. Ask any of the guys in here. I don't fuck with no brother. If he's already a punk, then that's another matter. They talked over the white boys' heads, not bothering to try and hide what they were saying. It was something that had happened over 100 years ago when the white men used to talk in front of their slaves, not bothering to conceal what they said, because they didn't give the slave the credit of having enough sense to understand what was being said, or rather, they just didn't give a damn. Okay, brother, I could believe that, but I just don't go along with rape, that's all, Chester replied. These white whores like it, my man. They really do. Come here, Mike, he ordered, as the white boy got up off the floor where he had been lying. As the white boy got up off the floor where he had been lying. As the white boy got up off the floor where he... As the white boy got up off the floor where he had been lying, pretending that he had been asleep, Tommy put his arm around the boy and stuck his other hand down in the back of the man's pants. The white boy turned a bright red, but stood there as Tommy played with his ass. Tommy reached down and pulled out his penis. Kiss it, Mike. Kiss it the way I like you to do it. Mike was short, but he was still an inch or two taller than Tommy. He shook his head, not wanting to do it in front of the other men. Quickly, Tommy reached up and caught him by the neck and shook him roughly. What did I tell you to do, bitch? You done got to be hard of hearing all at once? He snarled, and his voice carried an edge of danger in it that Mike recognized. No, Tommy, you know it's nothing like that. I just don't like to do things in front of people, you know? How about putting the blanket down over your bunk? We could get George to look out for us. Bitch, when I need George to look out for me, I'll ask him. Now get busy doing what I ask you to do. As the young white boy went down on his knees, Chester shook his head at Tommy's stupidity. The man was in enough trouble already. Now the fool was doing just what he shouldn't have been doing. Before, when he had said that there were no witnesses, he had made a point. It wasn't much, but it was a case that he had a chance of fighting. But now, with a ward full of men watching, he was ruining himself. Now there would be more than enough witnesses if the white boy should get up enough courage to press charges. And Chester believed that in the morning, everybody in the ward would be questioned one at a time, and he was equally certain that what Tommy was making Mike do now, would also be brought out. Oh, God, that's it, white lady, that's it. Hold it right there, Tommy said, still trying to impress the onlookers. Oh, Jesus, goddamn, this is the best head in the goddamn world. I'd give up my front seat in hell for this cap. Ugh. Ooh, he moaned, really feeling it now. Don't let a drop get away, motherfucker. He held the white boy's head tightly with both hands. Mike tried to pull back, but Tommy had too hard a hold on his head. Tears of frustration ran down Mike's cheeks as the black man held his head and began to cum in his mouth. The boy choked on the long black penis in his mouth, but Tommy continued to hold his head tightly. Cum ran from Mike's mouth and down the side of his chin. He choked and gagged, but it didn't do any good. Tommy held on for dear life. Chester looked away. The rest of the men watched for different reasons. Chester caught the eye of one white boy. The boy was staring daggers at Tommy. If he had a gun, he'd have shot Tommy dead in his tracks. That's one more witness against you, Tommy, my boy, Chester thought to himself. When they finished, Tommy wiped his penis off on the white boy's shirt. There, bitch, if you get hungry tonight, there's some joy juice for you to lick on. He laughed loudly at his own joke, then glanced at the old man who wasn't smiling. What's wrong, Pops? You got a love for these funky-ass white punks? He asked harshly. No, boy. I ain't got no love for them, but I believe I can stomach them more than I can a nigger like you. And when I use the word nigger in your case, it means just what it implies. That's true to foreign pops. You old Uncle Tom ass niggas are always worrying about Whitey, but you can damn well bet Whitey ain't worrying about you. Tommy lit a cigarette and blew out the smoke. I'm going to make these honkies pay for the 300 years of sorrow they caused us. He directed his words more at Chester and the old man than at anyone else in the ward. Who you trying to bullshit, man? Chester demanded. You ain't got to worry about making them pay, because everything you've did to them tonight and other nights, you gonna have to face the Grim Reaper for. Chester paused, then added, Don't fool yourself, Tommy. I don't know what you're in here for, but you're more than likely gonna end up with a sodomy charge sometime tomorrow. Tommy laughed harshly. Ain't no witnesses, man. It's my word against Gene's, so we ain't got no case. Now it was Chester's. Now it was Chester's turn to laugh, and he did it to the limit. He laughed so long and so hard that Tommy demanded, What's so funny? You don't believe it, huh? You think they can railroad me just because they find some cum in that Woods ass? You don't even have to worry about Gene no more, man, Chester replied. Just look around you. They're going to be over here in the morning. The detectives from across the street taking guys out of this ward and talking to them one at a fucking time, and you can bet on it happening. Bullshit! Tommy exclaimed loudly. You don't know, man. You just blowing hot ass air. He glanced around for assurance. This cat don't know what the fuck he's talking about. If he knew so goddamn much, he sure wouldn't have his ass locked up in here with us. Chester grinned. There's something else too, Tommy. Like I said, you ain't got to worry about Gene no more. They got all the witnesses they need right here in this ward, thanks to the freak show you put on for us. His laughter rang out loud and clear again. Even later on that night, after everyone had turned in, Tommy lay awake, still hearing the sarcastic laughter ringing in his ears. All right, folks, I'm going to pause for the cause just because. Whew. Type up the name of this. All right, man, I'm done, y'all. Here's the thing, you know. I'll be back in a couple of days. Okay, I'll continue to read over this classic right here. Sadly, my last Donald Goines book. My bad. My last Donald Goines book in this bibliography. Thank you, Pat Master. This is his last book that I'm reading, and you know, that makes me feel a certain way. You know what I'm saying, y'all? Like, this is his last book in this bibliography, and I basically created this channel 7 years ago off the back of these books. And this is the last one I'm reading. Navy Knave, wow. Yeah, man, and it's like, I'm feeling the way about that. You know, like, there goes that mortality issue. I have that book in my collection as well, says Pat Master. And I hope I'm reading it for you, man. I hope I'm reading it the way, like, I'm hoping I'm doing a good job, you know. I'm hoping. Yeah, so again, I'm feeling a way about that because it's scary to think about one's mortality. We all gotta go sometime, and you know that's an unsettling fact of life, man. Something like that posted in the back of your head. I know nobody really wants to talk about this, but it's an inevitability that we have to respect and understand as such as life, you know. And when Pat Masters says something like, yo, he helped me through life, means a lot, you know, because one has lots of thoughts going on in their mind. You have done a remarkable job, says Navy Knave. I was introduced to Donald Goines by you. You are all too appreciated right now. And it makes me very sad that this is the last book I read on this channel. Now, of course, I got others that I've already read that I have yet to stylize or produce right here on Audacity and shit to create stylized versions of these books. You know, you can find them on Ralph Reed's. I got omnibuses. I got the Ralph Reed original volumes as well. You know, give those a try, right? And I'm sorry, folks. I'm feeling away. You know, I am. I truly am, and I just want to take this moment to thank you for being here, for supporting the United Ronin Networks, and with all of those beautiful things being said, y'all, I would like to extend my thanks once again for y'all visiting the channel. And I will see you in a couple of days. I promise. I won't take too long. Stay sexy. Wait, let me do that again. Stay sexy. Red becomes you. I will see you folks on the next edition of Ralph Reed's Raw. Peace.